Great. Let's do the pledge real quick.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Quick roll call.
Cindy Souza.
Phil Winkler. Drew Martin.
Dale Cook.
Marty Tar.
Bill Zolper, Town Manager.
And it's somebody to get a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved.
Second.
And we do have someone here. I don't know if anybody has. Oh, that's true. All in favor?
Aye. Any against? Any abstentions?
Fast. Any public comments?
We do have some comments on Zoom.
Okay.
Hi, this is Joseph Kelly from Windows 7 Jersey. Is now the time you're inviting public comments?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm here with my wife, Stephanie. We've been on Jersey Street since about 2011, and I know that it's on the agenda today to discuss the flooding issues there and any actions that can be taken to help solve the issues there. We just wanted to make sure we added our voices to the research that you're already doing. We're in the second block, and we're going through a pretty major renovation as we speak now. I saw the pictures that I think were part of the agenda. It looked like they're all from the first block, where definitely the flooding is even worse. The yards will have standing water for 7 to 10 days after a good rain. We did want to just point out that even on the second block, there's several segments of the second block that there is significant standing water after any significant rain. I trust that you guys will understand that any sitting water can become a health hazard from mosquitoes and everything else, and certainly the marketability and values of the property. So we just appreciate being able to join in and just kind of add our comments to your discussion. And really, that's really all I wanted to add. It's just that we've been there for some time. It does appear to be getting worse year to year. It's significantly worse than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We'll just go ahead and move on. Anybody could put a motion in for approve the minutes from November 8th. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass. And so I guess the first thing on the agenda, let's get an update from Bill on projects. I know one of those is just about Jersey. So.
Yeah, so thanks, Mr. Chair. So just really quick, so DelDOT will be speaking on February 16th at 3 p.m. during our commissioners meeting about their public safety project, and that they've basically got the plans done. They're going to be sending out letters to different homeowners that are along Route 1 that have driveways that enter on the Route 1 but are no longer used as driveways. The sidewalks are actually, the sidewalks go down. So when people are walking, they trip over these sidewalks. So that's going to go out because DelDOT's going to want to work with those individuals before they just make those sidewalks. And where the driveways are still being used, they're going to make them ADA compliant. They have to have a certain grade with those driveways if they're going to remain there along Route 1. So they're also going to talk about the telephone poles that are on the sidewalk along Route 1. And they're going to talk about extending the Center Island project to Dewey Wave down to Van Dyke, Collins Street area, and then as far up as Clayton Street. So they'll be talking about that on the 16th. Also, Center of the Inland Bays will be in on the 16th to talk to the commissioners and provide them an update on the Living Shoreline project, starting over at Bay Resort off of McKinley Street, running around Sunset Park, around North Beach, and then over from Dagworthy Street over to McKinley Street, in that area. So those are those updates that are going to be highlighted during our meeting on the 16th.
Hey, Bill, can I ask you one quick question? So the access off of Route 1 on, this is only in the town of Dewey Beach. So give me an example of what you're talking about. I'm trying to visualizing that.
So there's some driveways that actually, the Gold Leaf has a driveway entrance
Okay.
that goes up and just goes to the building. So that piece of the sidewalk would be flattened out. So it's no longer actually used as a driveway.
I see.
If it's still used as a driveway, DelDOT is going to go in and just make them ADA compliant, the actual grade on either side of the sidewalk. Up at the starboard, where the starboard has the shark tank, there's a driveway there that's no longer a driveway. It just goes right up into the shark tank. So that's going to go across, and that'll be flattened out also. But people that still use their driveways, and they're still active driveways, they're not going to take those driveways away.
That'd be like that place alongside Nalu. There's that little cottage alongside Nalu. It has a driveway there.
If they still use the driveway, it's an active driveway, then they'll still have the driveway, yes.
And one other quick question, because I know I get these comments all the time about it being ADA compliant of the telephone poles. As you know, those sidewalks on Dewey are pretty tight. Those areas where there is a telephone pole, I don't see how a wheelchair can get around some of those areas. I'm just curious, are they looking to address that, or?
Yeah, so what they're going to do is actually looking at two options. One is the property owners, they're willing to give up a little bit of their front yard to have the sidewalk widened there. And if they aren't, then they're actually going to go out into the bike lane so many feet.
I understand.
There has to be a minimum of 5 feet for the bike lanes from the edge of the road to the edge of the bike lane. So if they go out around those poles, they'll still have that 5 feet. It's like the bump outs at some of the corners. They still have a 5 foot in some of those areas. So that's what they're going to do around those First, they're going to ask the property owner if they can actually go into the property. If they say no, then they're just going to go out into the road.
Any possibility, if they're gonna extend that out, for the, hey, Jim.
Got it?
Okay, I'm here.
Is there any possibility, because I again, besides the post, I do feel, I've always felt like the sidewalks were too thin, especially on weekends when there's a lot of people on.
Right.
Is there any possibility that they just widen them all the way down?
There are a couple spots where they are considering that, and we'll talk about that on the 16th.
Okay,
One of them is in the area of Collier's old trim shop. There's still an active driveway there, but that area gets really, really narrow. And then down along Reed to Dickinson, there's a couple spots where it's narrow. And then from Reed up to McKinley, there's a couple spots where it's, but what they're trying to do is figure out how much, they want to at least leave 5 feet for bicycles.
yes.
And as you know, 18,000 cars a day going north and south. They just want to make sure they leave enough area for bicycle safety.
Are they gonna make the, like over by Collier's, it's actually maybe a 3 or 4 inch difference between the sidewalk and then where their gravel starts? Are they gonna even that out at all?
So they're going to make any of the driveway entrances, they're going to take the grade back where it's more of a slope than it is just where it's rounded.
This almost goes the whole length of their lot.
Right, so that whole lot where you're talking about has, I think, a 40-foot driveway right now. So DelDOT will be talking to them about a 20-foot possible entry there. But that'll be between DelDOT and the property owner.
And everybody has to remember that when they widen the highway, they came right up to people's property line. And they can't just go in and take it. I mean, they could, but they wouldn't. You know, and that's why the telephone poles are part of the sidewalk. You know, so it's not just the normal situation where they could move a telephone pole.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you there.
That's okay. Is there any more questions on projects like that before I go to Reed Street, or Reed Avenue, Bayside?
Yep.
So Reed Avenue, Bayside, I've got Remington and Vernick on today. I know there's been continuing flooding on your street, especially on Reed. This past week, the flooding's just been all the way up to Dover Street, almost every day. And on Rodney Street, where the town hall is, it's come up pretty far. And over on Dagsworthy Street, it's come up at least to the parking lot at Bay Resort. I'll have Kevin Zielinski and Chris Fazio go in a little bit more detail from when they think the install is going to happen, but they have ordered the equipment. They are waiting for the equipment to come in so they can start the project. Again, just talking to some of the members here about how it's flooding down Hayden Street, how it's flooding down Dover Street, and it's all the way up to Bueno sometimes, down Bueno Street. So we do see it, and we recognize it. We were able to work with Remington and Vernick, and they may bring this up, that originally you authorized a little over $60,000 for the project. They actually, Jim Dedes and I actually talked to them, and we were able to reduce the costs working with them without taking anything away from the project down to $52,000. And with that, if it's okay, I'd ask Kevin and Chris to comment on the actual project.
So this is thank you, Bill. Kevin Zielinski with Remington and Vernick Engineers. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris Fazio is also on the call, and I do have Jody Bacher of AGN, formerly SPS, who is our sub-consultant on this project. Just to let the committee know, the materials were ordered approximately January 20th of this year. We're anticipating from the manufacturer about a 30-day delivery, which would take us, in the best case scenario, probably in the next 2 weeks. But we're being assured by the end of this month, February, that materials will be delivered, which are the 3 valves in question. AGN is scheduled to start work on March 1st, and then RVE will provide part-time inspection for the town of Dewey on that project. And barring any contingent on any accessibility issues, weather, of course, and tides, working with all of those conditions, we anticipate end-to-end a 1-week installation. Again, that could extend beyond that, given if we have to stop work because of those prior conditions I mentioned. But we're looking at probably mid-March to have this completed and restored.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess there's no prep work or anything that can be done ahead of the parts coming in to speed it up. We just got to wait for the parts to come in.
It's really like, and I know it's an old term that everybody's using. Supply chain issue. We're waiting to get these parts in, and it's really not going to be beneficial to try to do any clearing because it could silt right back up and we'd have to do it again. So we want to have the parts on hand, assure that they are, they're complete, and then just come in and knock it out.
Understood. Makes sense. Thank you.
So, and believe us, we're sympathetic to the issues. Bill's been sending me the photos, Chris and I, and we've been looking at it, and we call like every day. Where are these parts? Where are these parts? So as soon as we have them, you'll have them.
And not to make a joke of this, but if Kevin and I could jump in a pickup truck and drive down and pick these things up ourselves, we would hand deliver them to the town. Believe me, we know how desperately you want these in. Believe it, we know that.
Yeah, I sent them several pictures over the last couple of days of your streets, and what they've looked like. So they're very well aware of the recent flooding on the streets and the hardship that the folks that live on those streets are putting up with.
Thanks, Chris.
Chair, could I add one more thing? So,
Sure.
Caswell's come out and give us an estimate. It'd be $2,500 for them to come out and service that once it's done. They're going to come out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, you're going to come out with a camel truck and clear the system out. It's in your contract, but then after that, we have Caswell. We've spoke with them. I met with Harry Caswell down there, and it's going to cost us $2,500 to continue to do that throughout the year.
Is that quarterly or
It's going to be quarterly, yeah.
quarterly?
And
Okay.
and what are they gonna be doing? Getting rid of the mud that's washed up there?
So whatever goes down the storm drains, it doesn't go completely out into the bay. We want to try to wash that out so there's nothing left in your pipes.
Wash what out?
Whatever goes down the storm drains on the street, whatever goes down those, whether they're leaves or any type of sand,
Okay.
and try to get those washed out. And then a good question, my folks are going to keep an eye on the outside of the flaps. And then when we need to bring somebody in to dig that area out, we're going to have to continue to do that. That's got to be done. If not, the flaps aren't going to work.
Is this what you talked about the routine maintenance that is
Yes,
gonna be
right.
necessary on these flaps? Is everybody aware that they've tried the outside flaps before?
So during our last infrastructure meeting, we had two engineering firms give some options. And this was the one the committee voted on. And it was a unanimous a vote to go with this option.
Well,
Mayor Cook made the motion and you seconded it.
Are you aware that they've been tried before?
depends on what type of tribe before you talk about, they changed.
They had exterior gates
They had
on the
duct-
pipes before, they didn't work.
They clogged up and they never maintained them, then they tried the duct bill.
So the big thing is,
And that
then they
didn't
tried the duct bills, but your just point there that they never maintained it.
That's
There
correct.
wasn't anything to make,
That's
to
correct.
keep them clear, yeah, okay. So if we're
And
gonna
I
be
think they're
doing
gonna
that,
find
then-
that out. I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, just say if, like Bill talked about, there is gonna be the maintenance to keep this cleared out, then knock on wood.
And there's approximately $630,000 right now in the infrastructure fund, not counting this project yet. So that money, we're gonna, a certain percentage of parking and of transfer tax and building permits. Gary, Commissioner Persinger on, he probably correct me. But a certain percentage of each one of those goes into infrastructure. So, this continuing maintenance is gonna have to be continually funded.
So will we, as a committee, have to vote on that funding during meetings, or you're gonna put it as a line item? It's already in there. So-
I think it's just gonna be maintenance of the town. I'm not gonna have to come and ask every single
Oh,
time. I just
yeah.
think it's gotta be done.
Correct.
And
yeah.
when it's gotta be done, we gotta do it quickly. We don't want those flaps to shut.
Yeah.
If you think it needs to be voted on for whatever reason you find out legally or just want to vote on it, we can do it as a package at the beginning of every year. It automatically deduct it when you do it.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll come in, I'll bring the contract with, I guess I can name the company, with Harry Caswell, right? And bring that in and have you vote on it at the next meeting.
That'd be great.
The,
Guys,
does
this is
that
to make,
include-
kind of clarify, maybe. I just want to make sure you guys know, if it's not in the budget, I think there's a cap of around 10 grand or so on an expenditure that would then require a vote. But if it's under 10 grand, it wouldn't. I don't think it would require a vote. I think that's our limit that we use. Is that correct, Mr. Zolper?
It is, anything over 2,500, anything below 2,500, I can approve. Anything over 2,500 into 10,000, myself and the mayor approve, and then we come back and let the commissioners know about it, but we can go ahead and move forward on that project.
But David, if it's already voted as a package earlier in the year, you don't have to keep coming back every single time to vote on it.
That's correct. Yes.
Are they also going to address the drains at the end of Reed and McKinley?
Not in this project. At the end of Reed and McKinley. So Harry,
There are two on either side of the street.
right, when Harry Caswell came out, part of his estimate was to look at the drains on McKinley and on Reed for using the camel truck.
So will they do that?
They will come in and they can do one or two things. They can either suck everything up in the back of their truck,
Right.
or they get water and they blow the stuff out.
Okay, but that's part of the routine maintenance?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
2,500.
Yes. Are there any other questions on Reed Street or on McKinley Street?
No, that was my question.
Did not have any.
Okay.
You want to move forward and discuss issues with Jersey?
So I've received probably between 4 and 7 different emails and letters. I think you heard from one of the citizens that lives down there, and I think I forwarded them all to you, Drew, so you had a copy of them. And some of the pictures I'll ask Kate to bring up right now are some of the pictures from the first block. I also have pictures from the second block of the flooding. And I think when you see the flooding, if you don't know, I mean, it gets pretty bad. And what happens is the water just doesn't go away. Now in December, we had about 10 inches of rain. So we had a lot of rain, but you can see from this picture, this is looking from the street, halfway in the street down into this person's yard on the first block of Jersey. If you go to the second one, Kate, and here's another picture on Jersey Street, looking across the street. And then here's going down towards the ocean. That's from King Charles looking down. And you can see the flooding on both sides. And I would say in the second block up towards the middle where there's some new houses that have just been built, it floods like that also. And I think that's what the folks that were on here making comment talked about earlier. So there's a couple different options that I think that Remington and Vernick, they're coming down next Tuesday. We're going to go down on Jersey Street and look at them. I mean, one of them would be probably a drainage ditch, which nobody's going to want down the side of their streets in front of their property. And the other one's going to be a storm drain. On the north end, the only storm drain on the ocean side that I've been able to locate is actually on Cullen Street, halfway down Cullen Street. So Jersey Street has no storm drain. So that's going to be one of the options that I'm sure Remington and another contractor engineer I'm having come in look at that. I also asked Remington and Verdict to give us the contour line maps so we can see the grade up in the north end and why is there water sitting in certain areas. So Kate, if you could bring that up, that was the first slide. And then I could have Kevin from Remington and Verdict talk about why the water's sitting in certain areas.
Yeah, that was an interesting map. I'd never seen that before.
So if you just go up, yeah. So if you could just pan down a little bit, Kate, if you could. So they're just right there. So you have Jersey Street, and then Kevin, I'll have you talk about the contour lines, if you could, please.
Sure. So the committee, when Bill approached me about these issues with, and I believe it was Chesapeake, Jersey, and Carolina Street, if I stand corrected, were the 3 streets that we were concerned about, particularly Jersey Street, Bill. We took the liberty of putting together this aerial map with the property line overlay and then the elevation data. So for those not familiar with a topography or a contour map, the lines that you see there with the numbers superimposed along the lines are actually the elevation of that particular area. So if you notice, I guess it would be to the right. If you could get perfect right there. So if you see the last block there of Jersey, you'll see a line that closes itself, a regular kind of elliptical line there with the number 13. And if you notice to the right, 14, 15, 16 as it goes up toward the dune area. And if you go to your left, going to the left on Jersey, you'll see 15, 17, 16. So, Kate, if you wouldn't mind going back to where you were, that 13 is your low spot. And if you notice, it's almost like a pond. It will pool water there all the time. And as you go left and right, the elevation increases. So what does that mean? Water goes to the lowest spot, and it's always going to pond there. So we always start out with a contour map to get the relief or the elevation of that particular area. And we can see the water has nowhere to go unless you do measures like Bill had described, possibly a swale or a drainage ditch on the side, unsightly but could be effective, or a catch basin with a pipe that drains to either a lower elevation or out to the bay or ocean, depending on where you are. But to get it out from this low-lying area. The ultimate thing that might have to happen, and I don't even know, Chris, if we want to go here, is possible regrading, but that's an extreme measure. We would look at those other measures that we just talked about first. But this gives you a kind of a relief of the elevation of these areas and why and where they're flooding.
So those pictures that I showed, and these are on our on for today's meeting. So if you're at home, and most of the folks that are at home watching this meeting that I see there off to the side, they're the folks that sent me the emails that live on Jersey Street, 1st and 2nd block. So you can see where it's low. And this is exactly where those pictures were taken, where most of the flooding is here on the 1st block. And then the 2nd block, it's basically in the middle of the street. And then you have King Charles, which part of King Charles has a ditch, and part of it is a stormwater pipe that runs along the side. So the idea would be somehow to get this water from here to King Charles, and then from King Charles down to Silver Lake, which we would run into another challenge, which would be the pipes that run down into Lake Comegys into Silver Lake, making sure that those are open and no longer clogged. But right now, we just got to come up with different options to get the water off of Jersey Street, 1st block and 2nd block. So that's the reason I've decided not to pave Jersey, Carolina, or Chesapeake Street. Those are owned by the town of Dewey Beach. They're not owned by the state. The state's going to be coming in and paving from Collins Street to Cullen Street. They own those streets in Bayard Avenue. They will be paving those. But when I asked them to give me an estimate for Jersey, Carolina, and Chesapeake, it was $150,000 to do the first 2 blocks of each one of those streets. And then when I started to get the emails and the letters about the flooding, I decided, Jim Dedes and I went down there and looked at it. We decided to hold off on any paving down there, because what's going to happen is when they come in and pave those, they're going to come in, they're going to mill them, they're going to put new stone down, they're going to raise those the road up, and they're going to put a crown in the middle of it, and the water's really going to run off to the sides into the folks' yard. So before we spend money for new pieces of road in those areas, streets, we really need to go in and do the work if that's what's decided and what's funded by the commission, by you and the commissioners, to actually probably put some storm drains in at that north end to get them to run to King Charles, and then from King Charles down to Silver Lake.
And there's
That's a big.
major problems with trying to do that too, with state regulations for pollutants going into the soil.
I think the pipes are already there. And I think the original thinking was that the water would run from those streets onto King Charles, be captured in those ditch, go down to those pipes that are down at the end near Chesapeake, and then from there run into those 2 lakes. I mean, it's already
What I'm trying
there.
to say though, Bill, is that, you know, it's a likelihood that it can be done, but it's going to take a long period of just keeping at it. You know, you mentioned the Dewey Wave going through the center of town. We talked about that and with the state for the last 5 years, and we finally got it. Well, you finally got part of it. I say we, it's you actually that got it. But it takes a long time, and we have to keep going after the state to help us out to do it.
Well, this project up in this area on those side streets is going to be the town. And once we get a recommendation or some options from a couple of different folks, I'm going to be having them come, just like we did on Reed Street, to the infrastructure committee to provide those options, and then you'll make your recommendations or not to the commissioners on how you want to proceed.
There's still a lot of construction on at least Jersey and maybe
Carolina.
and Carolina. What impact do we need to wait till that's finished? Because that's disturbing the land too.
We're not going to do anything between now and summer. I need to go in and just get the options, and if there's going to be anything done up there, if we get the funding for it, it would have to be next fall, after some of the building's done. Now, if you wait for all building to be stopped, you may be waiting a long time. I think I think we'd have to work around that, but I don't think anything will happen.
Sorry, those streets are crowded with
Right.
construction vehicles right now.
Because I live close to there, I live on West Street and walk those streets. Those gullies at that end are just full of bamboo, debris, overgrown weeds, etc. And water, when it rains, it sits there for weeks.
Talking about on King Charles?
On King Charles, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
And so does it mean that those should be, I mean, the drain pipes, you can kind of see a little piece of concrete at the top and they're full. They are completely
Same thing on
full.
the other end on Bayard.
Correct.
Exact same thing I mentioned.
And so
Right.
those all need to be cleaned, I think, in order to be effective.
If I could bring something up, please. The town paid the Army Corps of Engineers, along with Sussex County, as well as the city of Rehoboth, to assess Comegys and Silver Lake health. And one of the things they talked about in a major way was, as Mr. Cook was pointing out, stormwater runoff going into Silver Lake from South Rehoboth, and what a huge problem it was. And I certainly don't know what the environmental rules are around this, but I would not operate under the assumption that we can divert our stormwater into Silver Lake, even with those culverts that are there right now. We may, in the process of trying to get that redone, we might find that that's not going to be allowed. Whether it's advisable or not is a whole nother question, but whether it would even be allowed, even if we decided we wanted to do it. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind, that I'm not sure that the stormwater runoff actually can go down to Silver Lake.
Where else could it go?
So is this is all a rainwater event, just standing there?
Yes, up at the north end of town. None of the north end of town, from St. Louis Street down to St. Louis Street, at least to Carolina, in the second block of Chesapeake, none of it is in a FEMA flood zone, like the rest of town. So when you get from Clayton Street, you run all the way down to Collins Street, it's all in a FEMA flood zone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in one of the lowest zones. So it's all rainwater that causes those issues. And I'm sure some of the folks that are on here, if they made comment, they would tell you that.
I just want to reiterate what David said and what Phil said earlier too. You know, it's not something that we absolutely, because we want to do it, we can do it. It's that we should try to do it. We should try to mitigate the problem. We need to make an effort, spend some money to attempt it, but we have to know that it may not happen. I mean, there's a couple of streets in Dewey that we just point blank told people over the years, you're in a gully, you're in a low spot. We can't raise it up. If you want to raise up your property, we'll work with you, but we can't do it ourselves.
Right.
And then that comes, you know, the properties around where you raise up are in a problem area, excuse me.
So one of the problems in the north end, we're having a lot of large houses built that meet the town code. They meet the town code, right? They meet the town code. But when the larger houses are built where there was a smaller house, and there's not as much green space to take up some of that rainwater. Commissioner Jasinski's brought some of that to my attention, along with other members that are here on the committee. But those houses are being right now built per the town code, and what's happening is the rainwater is coming off those properties, and they don't want it to run on their neighbors, even though some of them do. They want them to run out into the street. So then it floods the street. If the street is the lowest spot, like Jersey, the lowest spot on Jersey Street's the middle of the block. And that's why that water just sits there. The ground gets saturated and it's got nowhere to go. I mean, it's nowhere to go. So I think these
are even older houses where it's flooding at this lowest point.
Yeah. So we get Remington and Burt next week. They're coming down. We're meeting with them at 11 o'clock. We're going to look at a couple different streets here in town. And then I'm meeting on Wednesday with another engineer to also look at it. So when I come back, I have two different, not just one option from one engineering firm. I actually have two that you can review. Okay. And again, nothing will happen there until next fall at least. And that's what if somebody tells me that we can't run this water into King Charles because it runs down into Silver Lake? Then I don't know what we're gonna end up doing.
Are there options out there, and I'm sure Kevin can comment on it, when you may not have the ability or the pipes, drainage pipes aren't there, for certain areas where you can do, for lack of a better word, pits with material in there that absorbs a lot of runoff? Are there options out there that could provide that? For instance, if you're building a much larger home, we already know we're going to have a lot more runoff because there's no green space in that property. So part of that plan has to be they have to provide some type of mechanism for this runoff water to be absorbed better into the ground that they do have, and then help with the runoff. And I'm not sure if some of these areas, my guess is they're the lowest point anywhere anyway. Over time, I'm sure it's sunk. The road has sunk down some. Instead of doing a major drainage ditch, can that drainage ditch also be dug down and then put materials in there that can absorb more water?
Like a French drain or
Like
something.
and then, so it's not as much of an eyesore. You don't have a drainage ditch, but you dig that out and you put that in. Now, I don't know if that's an option. Kevin, I'm sure can comment on that, or Bill, I don't know.
I'm not.
I'm just wondering.
Can
if
I
that's an
ask
option.
a question? Can I ask a question? This is Ed Schoenfeld and Sandy Schoenfeld at 19 Jersey Street. And what you're talking about is one of the steps that we took with our property several years ago. We're right in the middle of that low point that you show on Jersey Street. And we've done two things. And this was in the email that was sent to the town manager. It's called a flow well. And it's in our front yard, and we contracted with Sposato Landscaping to do this work. And essentially, it is a very large pit filled with sand and filled with rock. And we routed all of the water from our downspout on the western side of the house, which was a big collection point. We routed that into the flow well. So the water collects in our front yard, and within an hour or two, depends on the amount of rain, that water drains down through the sand, through the rock, it percolates down, and it does not go out into the street. Obviously, it does have a limit on its capacity, and how well it works depends upon the amount of rain. We also, subsequent to doing that work, we put a French drain. Flow well essentially is on the west side of our property, in the front. We also put a French drain on the east side of the property in the front a couple of years later to collect all of the water runoff from our next door neighbor, 17 Jersey Street. And that house was essentially gutted back in 2019. A brand new house was essentially built in that structure. The property owner at that time did several things that added to the problems. And I think one of the pictures that you showed today at the middle of Jersey Street, looking out toward the street, I believe that is probably the parking area for 17 Jersey Street. But essentially what that owner did was to do something that was just raised as an issue. Two things: putting in a swimming pool in the back, which takes up a significant part of the backyard, and the entire rear of the yard is covered with AstroTurf. No grass, nothing permeable. And the third component of the work was to raise the level of the land several inches, so that in combination with the AstroTurf on top of the yard, which makes it non-permeable, all of that water flows downhill to us. And our response was to put in a French drain. The French drain works. It takes longer than the flow well. The water stands longer. The point of all this is we've tried some of these things. They work, but they work in moderation.
And I would also say that the other side of our home on 21 Jersey, we did some renovation and put their downspout so that it now goes toward our yard, the western side of our house. So, you know, you could talk about approval for homes and that kind of thing, but I think a lot of us as owners are at mercy of what goes on around us in terms of homeowners. We've done a lot at our own expense, but it's kind of an uphill battle to deal with what the neighbors have done. And then, of course, as the town manager mentioned a little while ago, if you pave the street, then you're raising the height even more, which puts more backwash into the yard. So I think that a drainage is essential, but it's not, you know, even with what we've tried, we're still having problems every time there's a heavy rain.
Thank you very much for your comments. It's eye-opening.
Of course, I find it interesting that there are two different issues here that have to do with the water. One is drainage, and the other is the bay water coming in. The south, and Bill mentioned the flood zone down there is coming in with the bay water. And I just think of what Rob Whitford from Precision Marine said some years ago. In all these situations, raise the land or lower the water, or pump it out somewhere, some way with the thing. It's just part of being in Dewey Beach. And that whole thing that you mentioned, Bill, that the people around Silver Lake don't want our water to drain over there. I'd never heard such a thing, but you know, that's the north side of town. It's interesting, yeah.
What I find interesting also is that people talk about neighbors raising property level. You know, is that against our code, or should it be against our code if it's not?
It's been brought to our attention, and it's been sent to the mayor, and I think to Commissioner Jasinski, and it's been sent to our town code official and to Assistant Town Manager Jim Dedes. But right now, these homes are being built, and they are within code.
No, I know the homes are within code, but for instance, raising the level of the property around the house.
It has to have a grade away from the house by the county code.
What about our code as far as raising or lowering the property? Raising the property has got to cause a problem for houses around it, right?
Yeah.
I can remember years ago when I had a bunch of stones put in front of my place, which raised it up. And I remember Dale, who was the town manager? No, not Dale. What was his name? The town manager then before Bill.
Mark.
Bill Mears.
Mark?
Bill Mears.
Scott Koenig. Scott Koenig. I replaced Scott Koenig.
No, that doesn't.
Mark Applebaum before that.
Mark Applebaum, that's
Right.
what I'm thinking of. And he asked me if I had gotten a permit to do that, to load the stones. And I told him, I said, I don't own the property. How can I get a permit? Because it was all in the right of way. And that's been a thing that's happened on Reed. People have complained about your stuff. You know, raising the thing up. But what are you gonna do? My point was, I don't think we have anything in our code about landscaping, or do we, about landscaping and how high it can be, or drainage, what have you.
But I think there is in the code about using permeable materials.
That's correct.
You know, for driveways,
Sure.
and I can tell you, they ain't permeable as you walk through the town.
And a certain percentage of the property has to be nothing built on it, so it can sink through.
Correct, and there are violations on every single street,
Really?
absolutely.
Huh.
Well, based on the Schoenfields, I believe I got their name correct, comment, I would love to hear from Kevin to see if that is a possible viable option, similar to what they did on maybe a larger scale. I just would like to hear his opinion if he's still on, or Chris, either one.
Well, Terry, why don't you let me tackle this one. So the impervious is your enemy. If something's impervious, the water's going to stay there. It's not going to go anywhere. You know, just big picture thinking. The roof water is your biggest culprit. You know, if you can find a way to take that roof water, and I call that a cistern, what your system is. You take the roof water, you put it into an underground system, over time, it infiltrates and goes away. That's a great way to get rid of a lot of impervious if you can handle those roofs and get those underground and take away some of that stormwater. You're always going to have a low point, the way it looks right now, right in the middle of the roadway. So how do you get rid of the low point in the middle of the roadway? You either raise up the paving, which is going to cause flooding in the front of the properties, or you put some kind of an infiltration device in the roadbed along the sides of the road to alleviate that. You're not going to get rid of the water, but you can hide it. You can play games with it. You can get rid of it over a long period of time. You want to get rid of that big hit of what you're experiencing. There's ways to do that.
Okay.
So Tuesday, we'll be down on Jersey Street, just looking at, on the ground with Remington, and then Wednesday with another company, just looking at possible options. There may not be any, but we want to at least try, right?
And Bill, if I could interject real quick, the reason why we picked Tuesday, it's supposed to rain Monday night into Tuesday morning. The rain's supposed to end around 8, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's a great time to go look at stormwater issues. That's why we picked Tuesday.
I know that's, this is Kevin. I know that's like the last thing Joey wants to hear is more rain, but immediately after a rain event is probably the best time to review and assess the actual conditions.
Yeah, our experience is that you're right on. You got to see it when you see a lot of standing water.
And that's why we picked Tuesday, because we tried to align it with the weather pattern and a rain event so we can get firsthand look
Right.
live, if you will.
It's good to hear.
That's great. You have anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay. Well, I don't think we have anything to vote on at this point. It looks like you have to go out and do your on-site work, and then after you do that, I guess we'll probably have to set up another meeting there.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate it. Anybody have anything, comments?
No.
Nothing? Oh, that's a quick one then. All right. Anybody make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Well, you lost me.
Thank you for everybody attending. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
You're welcome all.
Thanks for your time. Good afternoon.
Bill, we'll see you next week.
Yep, see you Tuesday.
Take care. Thank you.